So when you're trading tennis on Betfair, is there a right and wrong way of trading tennis properly? Well, of course there is. There is a correct way of trading it, and it goes hand in hand with another video that I produced. And if you're interested in learning how you should be approaching your trading on tennis, then watch the rest of this video. If you're interested in learning to trade on Betfair, then visit the BetAngel Academy, where you have detailed, structured Betfair trading courses. Or why not visit our website where you can download a free trial of BetAngel Professional, but also visit the forum where you can get detailed images, examples, and downloadable files. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and click on the bell icon if you want notification of new videos as they're released. So is there a right and wrong way to trade tennis? Yes, there is. If you want to understand the theory behind this, then you need to look at the video that was The Secret to Profitable Betting and Trading, because that gives you the basis on which you would do what I'm about to do here and the way that I'm about to analyze it. But basically, when you look at any market, you have to frame an opportunity within the market, and tennis is no different. Now, the advantage that you have with tennis is that it's structured. You basically will find that as you go through the match, you hit certain points, and those points are discounted into the chance of the player going on to win the match. So if you look at horse racing pre-off, for example, it's just driven by opinion, whether the horse looks good or doesn't look good, and various other factors. Is it raining? Whatever. That sort of is discounted in the price. So there's no sort of structure there. It's a bit harder to understand specifically what the price should be. However, on tennis, it's pretty simple. Players start at a certain price, and then if they win the match, it's 101, and it's a graduation, a step process between that and the end of the match. If you want to understand how that works, then fire up Tennis Trader, and it's one of the most complicated things that we've ever done, but this explains the structure of a match very well. Now, the thing to bear in mind is that as the match progresses, this will shift and change subtly depending upon what's going on within the match itself. So if we look, for example, at the set matrix, this gives you a good idea of the way that a match could progress. This assumes that De Backer is the server within this match, and these are all the possible paths at the end of each game that the set could take. You can see there's quite a large variety of them, but also underneath you see all of the odds for De Backer and Hassan, or Hassan, I don't know how you'd pronounce that, it could be either of those. We'll say his opponent, that's probably the best way to summarize it. But you can basically see if De Backer is serving first and it's love all, then he's going to be at 209 or thereabouts. And if you see if that remains the same all the way up to the end, you can see that that's going to remain pretty much the same because obviously they're level. However, if he wins a game, you can see that his odds shorten, and if he loses a game, then that changes as well. But you can basically see the path that the odds would take. So when you look at this first set in this match, depending upon what the scores are going to be, this is very likely how these odds will play out. Now, there could be some individual variation in a game, because say, he stretches for a shot and then puts his hand down and rubs his hamstring. Then people will start discounting that, and say one player has a lot of momentum and the other player's thinking, oh, I'm just giving up on this set. Then that's something you can't see in these stats before the match has started. It's just impossible. So the variation to these odds will give you a clue as to where the momentum is shifting within the match and whether you think there's a potential value within there. But let's understand how you would really get to grips with all of this. So if you want to mess around on Tennis Trader, you would obviously set it up correctly. I'm not going to go through the setup process here because that'll just extend the length of the video. But once you've set up the type of match, who's serving first, and you've calibrated that, then you can mess around with all different score lines if you want to mess around and figure out what's going to happen when and how that's going to happen. But let's look at that set matrix again, but illustrate a few points within here. So what we're saying in this match is De Backer is serving first, and it's love all. So let's look at the first two paths that we could take through this individual set. So of course he could go on to win this particular game, in which case we would follow that path, or he could get broken, in which case we would follow that path. And the concept here, really, if you look at these starting odds of 209, is if he wins the game, you will gain 9 ticks, and if he loses the game, you can see that we lose considerably more. So the concept here is that you're going to gain 50 odd ticks if he gets broken, but you'll only gain 9 if he doesn't get broken. So you can see that that's a sort of 5-to-1 ratio. So if you're thinking about this logically, you would say, if we're looking at sort of 1 in 5 chance, what you're sort of saying here is if you do 1 over 5, that's going to work out at 20%. You're going to say, will he get broken more than 20% of the time? Is there a situation in this match that leads me to believe that he will get broken 20% of the time? Or basically, from a trading perspective, can I predict a break of serve better than 1 in 5 times? So that's the way that you would necessarily look at an opportunity of a break in that first game. However, within tennis you're going to have a variety of setups. So what you'll probably find is if you cast your eye later on in the match here, so say it's 4-all, and we're going into that ninth game rather, then if you think about what's going on in De Backer's head at this particular moment in time, he's going to be thinking, well, if I hold this game, then I can put pressure on my opponent's serve. But his opponent will be thinking, well, if I can put pressure on his serve, I could actually end up serving for this particular set. I could end up winning this set 6-4, and if it's 4-all within the match, then basically I'm going to highlight this by drawing a nice little pattern around it. Then you can see that this is a much more critical game than the 0-0 that we saw at the start of the match. So you can see getting a break of serve at the start of the match is obviously important because he can build on that, but also there's more opportunity for the player to come back. So the path that they could follow in this particular match could sort of go like this. It sort of could go somewhere like that, and then they end up at 4-all. So when you look at that, you can immediately see that at the beginning of the match there's an opportunity to break, but there could be a break back. But as we approach the business end of the set, a break there would be much more significant. So you can see it goes from 208. Let me just erase some of this so that it's a little bit clearer for you. So you can see we go from odds of 208 here to 195. So the opportunity here is for an 8 plus 5, a 13 tick profit in this direction. However, if he does get broken, then you can see here that it goes to 306. So if you lay with £100, you could trade out for £100 profit on the trade at this particular point in time. So the point I'm trying to make here is, okay, we looked at that 1 in 5 scenario a second ago, but if you look up here, that 1 in 5 scenario is suddenly completely different. We're talking, in effect here, a 13 over a 98 chance, basically. So I'm going to have to get my calculator out to do this one. And some of you will be able to do this in your head. But basically, you're looking here at a 1 in 7.5 occurrence. So when it's 4-all in the first set, can you get a break of serve, or do you feel that there's a situation that's leading up to a break of serve that you can predict more than 1 in 7.5 matches? Because if you can, your trade is on, and you should be able to profit from this particular scenario. So this is the way that you would typically set up a trade. This is what I would define as framing a trade. You're basically saying, depending upon where we are within this match, and depending upon the current score, what happens next and how does that influence my opportunity of getting a positive trade out of this particular market. And that will vary quite dramatically depending upon where you are in the set. But also think about it, it will vary dramatically depending on the path that is followed in the incentive to get a particular result. So if the player wins the first game, breaks in the second, then wins the next game, he's going to be at 3-love. So you can see, if we look at that, you can see just with one break he'll be priced at 162. So the best way to understand what we're looking at here in terms of the layout within Tennis Trader is effectively with Backer serving first. This line here is him holding his serve. This line here is a break of serve, and this line here would be a break up. So can you see what effectively happens in tennis is you jump from one state to the other. So this would be a break up, this would be with serve, that would be a break down, and you can see that the path would sort of follow like that. Now I'm looking at it really simplistically, but that's simply because I haven't got hours to spend with you looking at the detail of how you would actively trade this market. But in essence, that's sort of what you're trying to do. You're looking at the opportunities within the match, you're seeing how that could play out, and that presents the trading opportunity for you. So say by some miracle he was 5-1 up, and then he tried a couple of little shots that didn't quite work out. That wouldn't really affect him to start with, and then you can see that necessarily that wouldn't affect him if he went on to lose a couple of games. But then look at the difference between that and losing a few games. Suddenly you've got a dramatic shift in odds. So again, you can sort of do that calculation there, and you can sort of say, if we're looking to do something at 5-1 up, how many times do we have to get it to 5-4, and what scenario would lead up to that? So the way that you should be thinking in tennis is not that this could occur, because these are all theoretical probables that could follow a number of different paths. So I mean, this one would follow this sort of path here, which is probably a little less likely. But what you're saying is, if the score is 5-1 in this set, and we think that we're going to possibly get out at this point here, look at the difference between the two and say, is there a reason for that to happen? Do we see some evidence of that happening? Is there a scenario that will lead to that happening? Maybe he's getting a bit smart and is taking a few dodgy shots, just to sort of show off because he's miles in front. He's thinking, well, it's not really an issue because even if I lose the next game, I'm still going to finish it off. And then he loses the next one and thinks, well, that's not a problem because I'm serving for this. And then suddenly the break occurs. You're trying to position yourself ahead of that. It's not about the fact that this scenario, this future exists. It's anticipating that that is about to happen, but then looking at the maths of it and saying, well, I think I can do that. I think this is a reasonable set of odds. So you can very often, if you dig deep enough, I have done this before, I have highlighted scenarios saying, well, the downside on this particular trade is quite small. Actually, that's not small, is it? The downside on this trade is quite small, but the upside is potentially huge if you think that this is worthwhile. And that's the essence of trading. You're looking for scenarios where the potential downside is minimal, so you've got potential downside here quite small, but the opportunity for some upside, as long as you've got some reason to do that, is potentially large. But even then, if you settle into a pattern of working very hard on these sort of scenarios, where you're looking at scenarios that are fixed, then you will get better and better at spotting when those opportunities are likely to come around. So it's much better than watching a match, seeing the match sort of meander all over the place, and then trying to make a decision on what's going to happen next. It's better to look for a particular setup, say 4-2 up in the first set, and then actually take a position based upon that and practice setups that allow you to execute a strategy around a particular score. And of course you can get BetAngel to hunt for scores for you if the live score feed is provided by Betfair for that particular tournament, and then it will just flag to you when that scenario is presented. Then you switch to that match, or maybe you're watching it already or something coming up to that score, and you can make a decision on it at that particular point in time. Now the interesting thing as well is if we have a little bit of a closer look at this, say we're going to go for, if it's 3-all in a match, and we're looking for a break of serve at that particular point in time to grab this big move in the market here, like a pretty much an 80-tick move. The thing to bear in mind is that actually if we look at BetAngel, you can actually switch to the game matrix, and what the game matrix will do is present you with what will happen on that particular scenario. So if we say 3 games all, and we go to the game matrix, we were basically saying that we were looking at a move from 208 to 287. But if we actually look at the game matrix, where does that sort of 287 occur? Well, it occurs at the end of the game when it's in this in Debacker's favour. But maybe if you set your sights a little bit lower, you can see here you can get a 34-tick move, or perhaps a slightly bigger one, given a range of other scenarios. So the interesting thing about looking at it this way is you can actually position your closing trade in the market at a price that is a little bit more conducive to getting filled. So say we set our sights at around 230ish. You can see a range of scenarios here that will allow you to identify points at which 230 would occur. So maybe at 1530 with a double fault, with a single fault rather, a second serve is the word I'm looking for, it would touch about 230. So you can sort of draw an arc of opportunity here, which is sort of basically saying every scenario within here would give me what I need. And therefore, when you look at it from that perspective, you can sort of say, well, okay, we could go for the break of serve that could occur within the set, but why don't we just go for a mini break? Why don't we go? And you can see the scenario here is we're basically saying if we're 2 points up, we're more or less saying here, if we're a point up and basically serving to save the game, would also occur. So we've got a number of different scenarios here. Or indeed we have here 15-30, a point down, but maybe on second serve would generate the potential payoff for us. So rather than just looking at one particular scenario here, we could actually generate a different type of opportunity by basically looking at the opportunity within inside the game, and then perhaps positioning our closing trade, opening the trade at the beginning of the game and closing the trade by putting an order in based upon where we think the price is going to reach. And that's important to do as well, because if you try and trade during a game, you're obviously going to get a bit of a problem here, because you've got people on court that are going to be able to see the point before you. So you would only ever enter these positions at the end of a game, or if you know where the odds are likely to be given a certain score in the next game, when they're basically swapping sides, sitting down or getting ready to serve, then that's the opportunity to get into the market without having to give away any margin to anybody that can see something that you can't. But yeah, when you're looking at trading any particular market, what you're actually looking at really is the potential payoff. You're saying, if this happens, what happens from here, and what will the odds be, and therefore when should I get in or out of a particular position within the market? What's the potential payoff? What's my chance of executing that trade profitably? And that is how you should be trading tennis.